A month before the event, the streets were full of posters and signs. From there, a slightly confused and kind face of a young red-haired girl with a book of her own composition in her hands looked out. The inscription below read, "Creative Meeting with Asya Herbert, All the Secrets of Writing and More." Of course, our, quite deservedly beloved by all newspaper, had to be the first to publish an article about this wonderful author. And I was chosen as the journalist who would write this article. Of course, a young and successful, absolutely incompatible things. Writer came to our city and even agreed to hold 3 free meetings with readers. The only phenomenon of this girl was the absence of bad reviews, and I had to unravel this secret. Maybe I should have given up on this interview, occupied myself with something boring and useless, but just not got involved in it. But anyway, at 6 o'clock in the evening in the public library of our city, I was already looking in anticipation at the empty stage, as were 200 people in the audience. Встреча была поистине великолепной. Писательница бесконечно сыпала интереснейшими эпитетами и сравнениями, отчаянно жестикулировала и отвечала на вопросы. Oddly enough, in contrast to the good reviews on social networks, there were a lot of dissatisfied critics here. I myself can't say anything about her books because I read them literally the other day, and then only briefly. However, Anna smiled good-naturedly, and it seemed as if all these attacks did not touch her at all. After the 2 hours allotted for the meeting, I approached her to finally take a short interview. When the hall was empty, and only I, the sensational author, and the organizers remained, the interview took place. Having heard the answers to a couple of questions regarding the pseudonym, creative path, and the like, I asked the main one. Many readers are interested in the phenomenon of reviews. For all your books on the internet, you can't find a single review that in any way tried to belittle your work. However, at this meeting there were many dissatisfied critics. How do you explain this? Are you really such a good author? Or can everything be attributed to simple filtering of comments? It's all very simple here, she answered, smiling just as good-naturedly. Without unnecessary modesty, I can say that my books are quite readable, and even, I'm not afraid of this word, brilliant. People who come to such meetings usually express not their own opinion, but the opinion of those with whom they agree on everything. Let me digress a little from the topic. You know, there are people who, due to the lack of critical thinking, do not have their own opinion. And then all that remains for them is to find someone whose thoughts they will follow all their lives, and think not with their own head, but only swallow the material already chewed by another person. But after meetings with me, they see in me someone they can follow, now taking my statements and thoughts instead of the previous leader. So, leaving here, dissatisfied critics become my admirers. Thank you for your answer. I would like to end our interview on a more positive note, so I will ask you, where do those dissatisfied critics go, who nevertheless came here with their thoughts and opinions? Do you really eliminate them somehow as an obstacle to creativity? I asked in a joking tone. Oh, absolutely not. I didn't lay a finger on any of those critics. Besides, I've already explained my method to you. By the way, I call it review filtering, the writer answered quite seriously. At this point, our interview came to an end. Nothing that could dispel rumors or arouse the reader's frantic interest. Therefore, not so much by me as by the management, it was decided to follow Asya to the hotel itself, in order to exclude the possibility of her harming the critics or meeting those who could do so. Having followed the writer's taxi in my car, I drove straight to the hotel where the author was apparently staying. No contacts with the outside world were observed during the trip, but then I could not follow her and, for example, learn anything from her telephone conversations. I had to return empty-handed, expecting that the second meeting would bear more fruit. This is how it would have happened, if not for some circumstances immediately after it. I took my friend, who had an idea of Asya Herbert's work, to the second meeting at the Philological University. This event took place in a small auditorium, and there were significantly fewer people. My friend and I sat in the back row, but during the meeting the author still recognized me, and even, unnoticed by the others, winked. This time, there were about the same number of dissatisfied people as last time, and, after the autograph session, my friend and I hurried after one of these critics in order to exclude any manifestations of cruelty towards him. But spying on an unsuspecting man was not successful. He got home quite calmly, And then we decided to drown this failure in strong alcohol. You are probably wondering why I call my companion by different names that do not specify his identity. I do not exclude the option that you do not care, but still. The thing is that I do not remember at all who was with me that evening, nor even more so who the poor guy we were following was. Only vague silhouettes remained in my memory, but not a clear picture. And if in the morning of the next day this could be attributed to a hangover, then after some time it began to raise questions in me. And in order to exclude these questions, and also to write, of course, not the first, but at least an interesting, I do not say the best interesting, article, I decided to attend the last meeting with Asya Herbert in our city. It was held in the Institute of Journalism, a rather shabby wooden building. You'll understand what I mean later. A crowd of young journalists were comfortably seated in a medium-sized auditorium. I was among them, hoping to be unrecognized this time. It was late evening, and I even dozed off, listening to the same answers and questions over and over again. I was pulled out of my reverie by a loud noise, an almost ripe scandal. The listeners rose from their seats and vied with each other to accuse the poor writer of deception, falsifying reviews and bribes. It seemed that something terrible was brewing. The air grew tense, either from the shouts of heated journalists or from the fact that someone had come up with a diversionary maneuver in order to nip the budding rowdy in the bud. And indeed, there was already a whiff of smoke from somewhere on the side. The screams became quieter, and I decided to get to the exit as quickly as possible before the young people woke up. The last thing I saw at the exit, before the frightened crowd rushed at me, was how Asya Herbert's bright green eye playfully winked at me. We regret to inform you that the only surviving journalist visitor to the famous Asya Herbert's meeting went mad, wrote his own version of events, and died yesterday evening, 3 days after the incident. Our newspaper provides you with an authentic copy of his message, accompanied by photographs of the ill-fated writer, the scene of the incident, and the unfortunate journalist. Is what he described in his drafts really true? The man himself adhered to the version of Herbert's inexplicable abilities, accusing her of almost witchcraft and curses on innocent people, which he hid under the guise of good nature. Our reliable sources are confident in his insanity due to alcoholism and subsequent head trauma after the fire at the Institute. The writer refused to comment on this matter, citing her extreme workload and dislike of gossip. One way or another, it is up to you to judge who to believe and who not. Just be careful not to be subjected to the infamous filtering of reviews.